Okay, so it looks like we are live. So, hey there, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Chuck, of course, as you know. I'm here with my co-host, Max. And today what we're specifically talking about is a achievement on Max's part to become a Next City Vanguard. He actually just recently attended the 2020 Next City Vanguard conference in Greensboro. The reason I say 2020 is because it was actually postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and he is just now attending it. So again, Max, congratulations. And to start, could you tell us a little bit about the Next City organization and what a Vanguard is?
Okay, shoot, I didn't do my homework here. I hate to be like sort of the representative of the organization. I'll do my best. Next City is one of the largest sort of media outlets focused on cities in the world. And then specifically, they are the largest one for covering city issues that relate to inequity, social justice, things like that. So yeah, for me, I got drawn in years ago to this website and to this publication because they had a lot of great stories about cities, which is our passion. But then obviously over the years for me, I could see that they really take on an angle of the inequity side, and which to me makes sense since we sort of ascribe to Richard Florida's take on urban on the next urban crisis, which deals with exactly this. So
yeah, absolutely. And so with him and with that kind of change our cities for everyone, it is a meaningful thing, and I'm sure that Next City and Vanguard as a whole has done some meaningful work in communities over the last few years. So specifically though, when do you think you first became familiar with the idea of being a Vanguard, or when did you become motivated to pursue that?
Yeah, I can tell you. I first learned about it in 2013 because my friend Ennis Davis, who we had on the podcast a year ago, he became a Vanguard and talked about it on his website. And I think maybe I spoke with him about it in person. Ennis, I always considered him sort of a mentor in the urban planning sort of cities kind of field. And so when he earned that achievement, I learned about it from him. I can't remember if that was exactly when I wanted to strive for that, but it came on my radar. And then I think the very next year, another person from the Jacksonville Metro Jacks community also became a Vanguard, and he's a great Mike Field. He's a great sort of community and city advocate in Jacksonville. He's had an instrumental hand in a lot of great programs in Jacksonville. So then when he got it, I think probably by that point I was thinking, oh, maybe it's something that I can strive for. So I remember I applied in 2016 for the first time and was not accepted. And then I always planned to try again, but each subsequent year something happened where I wasn't able to apply or I wasn't going to be able to attend. So I just put it off for a year. And so finally in 2020, that's when I applied the second time, and I was fortunate enough to be selected. So that was sort of the timeline for me thinking about this.
So great timing too, right? I mean, so you got that big achievement and you got selected, and then boom, COVID jumps in on us, right? So, and Ennis, just for those of you guys that aren't familiar, he's an urban planner as well as an author up in Jacksonville, and his work really speaks to itself. So it really speaks to how prestigious this organization is that he's one of their recipients. So I want to talk specifically about what was some of the work that you did, because I know that they promote social justice and equity and kind of creating opportunity for people in the city where it might not be there. So what is some of the work that you think you did that allowed you to be chosen for this?
Yeah, All right, so I guess I'll answer first by saying what I thought initially when I first got accepted. What I was thinking was the big difference, and that is, for my first application, a lot of what I wrote was focused on what I was planning to do. I had a couple programs that I wanted to launch in Jacksonville, and then my 2020 application was actually about how I had done those things and how I achieved those things. So I think that, for me at least, it seemed obvious. Like I was just some kid with hoping to do some stuff and hoping to make a little bit of an impact. And then in 2020, I actually had succeeded. One of my programs, I received a large grant from the city to do, and so that's one thing. However, once I got to the conference and met all the people and really saw clearly what the focus of the conference is, which is on the communities and the inequities and justice side, then I realized that probably another aspect that helped me, and which was not a focus of my application, however, it was a large part of the work that I'd done, was my work with the Ritz Chamber Players, and that's the classical music organization that I was with for a long time, 7 years or so, 7 or 8 years in some capacity, for that long. And the Ritz Chamber Players mission is to increase visibility, inclusion of minorities in classical music. Minorities specifically, for our case, being African American diaspora, but also, Hispanics lack visibility in classical music as well. So those are the two demographics that are really underrepresented. So, I suppose to some degree my work with that organization probably was very in line with what the Vanguard community is about.
That's awesome. And that's really, it sounds like you really did some meaningful stuff there in terms of, again, as you are saying, a population that was kind of underserved and really didn't pursue or see classical music as an option in many cases. So that's awesome. And so we got you there, and we finally got COVID over, and we get to the conference, which is in
and Greensboro.
I was leading you in there. Sorry.
No problem. I was like, yeah. Does Chuck know where it is? Okay. So yeah, I was in Greensboro. I knew where it was when I was applying in 2020. Like when they open up the application, they've already selected the host city for the upcoming conference. So I knew it was in Greensboro all along from the very beginning that I was applying. For big city people like you and me, I think Greensboro isn't like top of mind at all. So, to be honest, there's probably a little bit of disappointment at the time that I was applying, but of course I still want to apply. I still hope to get it, and I'm definitely gonna go if I get it. But it's just it's not the coolest city that I want to go exploring with this type of community. That was my initial thought. Maybe we'll get to it, but of course, actually going there and seeing everything definitely transformed my opinion of the place.
Yeah, that's good. I actually, in looking at the conference schedule too, I think like 2018 or so, I think they might have done New York, and they've done some really bigger cities. So this kind of jump for them to go to really not even a secondary city in the US like Charlotte or Raleigh, but going to really a place that is kind of the opposite in a way, with no disrespect intended to Richard Florida's Superstar City, where you have prices skyrocketing out of control, and really, I think maybe contributes to a 21st century opportunity with more remote work. So how much would you say the conference interacted with Greensboro as a city?
I'd say extremely high. They did a very good job of that, with the caveat that we were there for 3.5 days. So there's a limitation to what, who you can meet and what you can do. But it was really, really good, really, really packed schedule. I think I was telling you before that it's like almost like every minute from morning to night, every
Wow.
minute is sort of accounted for, and they were kind of like shuffling us. But like, you don't even, there was almost no sort of like, yeah, after you hear from somebody, there's either a panel or like a lecture or something from somebody, then there's almost no downtime. There would almost be like a 5-minute shift. Either we're like hopping on a bus and going somewhere else, or we're just literally like walking across the hall. And then there was like, they had already set up for like another panel discussion or something. So there was, it was hard to process. We were all sharing about this at the conference, the rest of the Vanguards, how like, it almost took like several hours late at night at the end of each day to like sort of process everything, because you couldn't really do it during the time of. I'll say that to some degree, the people we hear from and the people that we meet on the conference is hand selected very much by sort of the host committee in the city. So this was tailored for us by sort of, I think the Organization for Action Greensboro, which is a very great civic-minded, active, sort of advocacy organization there, and a few other people. Maybe the chamber was involved as well. I heard it's the people who sponsor the event. They sort of get a lot of control over shaping who we see and who we meet. And so to some degree, that's maybe a little bit less authentic than it might be if it was reversed, and if it was us from the outside coming in and really finding out who we should meet, rather than people on the inside deciding that. So, and I do know that Next City is trying to create either a better balance or even give themselves most of the control and kind of have it so that the sponsors don't have as much control, the city sponsors don't.
Makes sense.
Forward. So, but anyway, having said all of that, the Vanguard community, I would exclude myself almost and just say that the amazing people who were part of that, the Vanguards that I was with, they really do a great job of like kind of cutting through the fluff and seeing what people are saying for what they really are saying, and kind of asking really pointed questions as well. So even though maybe we didn't get to talk to all the people that we would want to talk to and learn all the things we'd want to learn, we were able to come away with a pretty good view with the people that we had. There were a lot of I would feel, if I were on the receiving end of some of these questions, I would feel a little tense trying to address some of these. So yeah, I feel like for 3.5 days, we got a really good insight into Greensboro, some of the issues that they're having, so some of the ways that they've tried to tackle those issues and so forth.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, like, it sounds like they had a lot of good conferences throughout. I think, to your point, it should be somewhat balanced, because obviously you don't necessarily want like the entire session or conference to be like a walking visit or move to Greensboro tourism ad and all that stuff. But I do think that because the city gets an opportunity to host, and it's not a destination city necessarily that comes to mind, I think it is cool that it gets an opportunity to show some of the positive attributes that we were able to find throughout. So it sounds like it was very busy throughout, but one of the themes I think we discussed was that you were actually in kind of teams, and you actually had to do kind of some process and work yourself. So what did that look like?
It was so at the beginning of the conference, or before we even got to the conference, we were told that we would be put into groups, and we would be addressing sort of a very broad issue. And there were 3 different topics available. And so I ended up being assigned to the group that was sort of, I don't remember the exact words, but it was sort of, how can Greensboro address the future of affordable housing, or how will that look? And so when we first arrived on the first day, I got to meet my team members, and we knew that this was the topic from from prior to the beginning of the conference. And so with that said, for the first 3 days of the conference, we really didn't necessarily interact in any larger capacity with our teammates. It was just, everyone was meeting everyone. I was trying to just meet as many people as I could. And then we weren't really doing anything specific to our topics. Maybe incidentally, as you're just soaking in everything, then you might have some thoughts about the topic that in the back of your mind. But there was really nothing. They weren't really pushing us. We just all knew, oh, we're supposed to do something, right? And there was just always an open-ended, like, what are we supposed to do? And so really all what it came down to was just the last day, the day that we're supposed to make this presentation addressing, in my case, affordable housing in Greensboro. Then it was not really until that last day that we got together with our teams. We were given local experts to speak with. My group had a couple people, the housing director, and then somebody else. I can't remember what organization she was with, but she was a former councilwoman as well, city councilwoman who had now come on to head some, maybe it was like the homeless something advocacy group in the city. So anyway, they spent an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so, talking to us, answering our questions, and sort of trying to give us more insight into this specific topic. And then we had like three hours with our group to just like throw together a presentation. So that was the process. It's somewhat loose, but you do want to take it seriously, because in the end you are making a sort of PowerPoint presentation, slide presentation. It is being recorded and broadcast around the world. And in attendance was the mayor and a few other important officials. I can't remember now, but there, you don't want to make a fool of yourself. So you're put in a position where you do want to kind of make a decent, presentable kind of job, but it's not something where we were like working on it throughout. It really was very much thrown together at the last minute. So there's that. And I spoke to Ennis a lot about this, because he was here starting in 2013, prior to when they did this. And he said the Vanguard conference prior to that was just one big family, and everybody was just having fun, but also learning together. And then he noticed somewhat of a shift once they started doing this sort of challenge / big idea, where people started to be a little bit more concentrated into their silos with their groups. I didn't feel that way for us, but yeah, that he noticed that happened. That was a little bit of a shift. And then also everybody's a lot more tense and nervous. There's just sort of that veneer of like, concern throughout the 4 days, because we're like, man, we have to do this presentation.
Gotta show out. Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that. We couldn't just totally cut loose and totally like, we did have that in the back of our heads. So,
right.
But that's what that was. And, it's interesting. I don't know if it's really, how effective it is in a real world sense for the cities that are getting these ideas. I thought some of the presentations from my peers were amazing. And there is some stuff that, people could really look at and take some action on. But having said that, I don't know. I don't know. There's pros and cons probably to having this event, this big idea sort of exchange. But yeah.
Makes sense. Well, that's a really good account of it. And it sounds like there's, as with anything, there's positives and negatives. But I guess to kind of close out, what type of person would you say that Next City or being a Vanguard is really a good fit for? And like, what things do you think you'll take from it moving forward most significantly?
If you love cities, this should be important to you. Because like I said, they do have a very, very strong focus on social inequities, and but that's sort of an intrinsic aspect of cities that we have to address in all of our cities, along with other planning aspects that get discussed a lot on city data and places like that. But really, the social inequity side is just as important, if not more so. And so if you love cities and you want to learn more about these types of things in our communities and how you can sort of address those same concerns in your community, because every city in the United States struggles with various aspects of these to different degrees, perhaps, but it is an issue that we have to be aware of, and so I think the idea of Vanguard, of the conference, is to bring together people from all over so that we can all share what we've seen and what we've noticed in all the different communities that we come from, and then also take those ideas back to our communities. So that's really what they're going for. And so if you care a lot about your city or your community, that'll be important in the Vanguard conference.
The cat just invaded, sorry.
And what was the second part of your question?
I guess, like, is there anything specific that you'll take away from this movie?
Oh, yeah. So for me, I did feel a little bit like an outsider, a little like imposter syndrome, if you will, because me and there's a few other people who talked about this. Like we're sort of outside the industry. I am, I'm not like most people were like planners, architects, people who do this type of work professionally on a daily basis. And so in that case, I felt a little bit like an outsider. Secondly, I live in Miami now, which, when I was in Jacksonville, I did feel like I was much more involved in the community. Whereas now living in Miami, I'm not really like, there's very little that I could say that I've done in terms of community impact.
The much bigger pond, so it's probably harder to be,
Yeah, I don't want to say that, because there's plenty of things people can do in a big city to like help and make an impact. But it's just, for me, I was still just kind of getting used to living in Miami prior to COVID. So, so it's a different kind of feel. And then on top of that, I'm sort of in a holding pattern to be leaving Miami. So I don't know that, there's a lot that I'm going to be bringing back necessarily.
Right.
But I guess perhaps, I may be back in Miami in 5-10 years. So we'll see. But I guess my point is my current state, I'm sort of in a holding pattern in Miami, and then I may be sort of nomading around for a little while. So I don't necessarily feel like I have a home city that I want, that I can like, oh, this translates to what we should do in my home city, because I don't really have one. So in those ways, I feel like I'm an outsider. I'm a little different from the other Vanguards. And so to answer your question, I guess, I think my biggest takeaway is to continue to learn and see what they're doing, because I was really impressed by what a lot of these other folks are doing. Like in general, but then also a handful of specific people, like just amazing work that they're doing in their communities. So I think more than anything, it's just that community that I'm now connected to. We're loosely sort of a family of Vanguards, and so that's sort of my takeaway, is to continue to stay connected to them, see what they're doing, and in the future maybe see how I can help them in what they're doing.
Absolutely. Well, that's great account of that whole conference, and I enjoyed learning more myself. And hopefully for anyone tuning in, if you decide this is for you, you can go ahead and apply it also. So maybe Max or myself eventually will see you there. So anyways, you guys have a great day and thank you for tuning in.
Cool. Thanks.